to the Coffee House, where in the next hour, Montgomery County School Board candidates face off, and we go inside the new Blair High School. We'll look at the promise and perils of dietary supplements, tune into the Cajun sounds of squeezed Bayou, and consider whether there's room for skaters in the new improved downtown Silver Spring. We've got the top 10 lists for book sales and video rentals, the song and dance calendar, plus an Ethelbert Miller poem, and an ode to your boss for Boss's Day. Hi, and welcome to Coffee House Forum. November 3rd, that's Election Day. Nationally, the pundits say it's a referendum on Bill Clinton. In Maryland, attention focuses on the gubernatorial race, pitting a chameleon-like incumbent against a challenger who strains not to look scary. In Montgomery County, big dollars are down on the state's attorney's race, and there's sporting interest in who will win the 4th at-large seat on the county council. Also up for grabs, 2 seats on the 8-member county school board. We'll talk with the candidates for the at-large seat on the school board. An important race? Well, consider this. The school budget is over $1 billion. The board decides what gets taught, how much teachers get paid, which schools to close, and where to build, like the new Montgomery Blair High School in Silver Spring. Ross Adams has a report.
The sounds of excitement can be heard in the hallways of the new Blair High School. And Blair officials say compared to the old school, this facility is like another world.
So we feel like we died and went to heaven to have so beautiful a space, and it's all together.
That's a big difference. Assistant Principal Pat Hurley says the old Blair on Wayne Avenue had buildings detached from the main campus. But Hurley, who's been with the school for 9 years, says now students will have easier access to all facilities.
We have a beautiful new gym that can be subdivided. We have a weight room, we have a dance room.
This new school replaces the old, cramped and crowded structure built more than 70 years ago. And the new school can accommodate the 2,800 students enrolled here, but there have been some problems with crowding.
We've had some spots where there has been congestion, but I think a lot of that is just the students and the staff getting to know the building and the best ways to get from here to there. And then
one parent who remembers the old school says the new building should put all parents at ease.
On balance, it's a far safer facility than Wayne Avenue was, mainly because it is better designed, it's far more secure.
The school's proximity to the Beltway has some parents worried. One major concern for the new high school is the issue of pedestrian safety. Students who walk to school have to cross busy intersections like University Boulevard.
Students that are walking, we have encouraged them, and we have security who are on bicycles, who are out in the community in the morning and the afternoon to help make sure that they are crossing the streets at the lights and at the crosswalks.
Although most students are bused onto the new Blair, for those who walk, there are crossing guards stationed around campus to ensure safe passage onto and off the school ground. Another big change for students is a closed lunch. Unlike the old school, students can't leave campus during the lunch period.
They are in class, they are more on task, and they are learning more, I think, as a result of the closed lunch.
Some students disagree.
Oh, I think that's stupid. We all have to stand in a line with like 300 people every day. So it's hard. I don't know. I'd like to go to Roy Rogers over there or something.
Closed lunch aside, most students seem to agree the new Blair is a much improved facility. For the Coffee House, I'm Ross Adams.
Thanks, Ross. Let's get back to the school board race, where the 3rd district seat and an at-large seat are being contested. The at-large candidates are Stephen Abrams, a former Rockville City Council member and unsuccessful Republican candidate for the county executive in 1994. Steve Abrams represented District 2 on the school board from 1992 until he was unseated in the 1996 election. His opponent is Dan Parr, a Silver Spring consultant. Dan Parr was a leader in Voters for a Better Blair, the group that spearheaded the effort to build the new Blair High School, which we just heard about. He waged an unsuccessful campaign for the school board in 1996. Welcome both of you to the Coffee House.
Hey, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Dan, a lot of people in the southern portion of the county, the eastern portion of the county, have often felt like they're the kind of neglected cousins and when it comes to school funding, school development. But now we have the new Blair High School, we have the building of the Tacoma Middle School. Has the board gotten a bad rap from the down county area?
I think a lot of it was perception. I think the board was trying for a long time. I think that a lot of it had to do with the county council and appropriation of funding. I think that just like downtown Silver Spring or Wheaton or any of the down county areas, the older areas, it takes a concerted effort to come back. And I think the high school is a sign that this community is ready to come back. And I think it's encouraging. I think it's going to be a linchpin in pulling the community together. And really every school, every public school should serve the same sort of purpose in their community, sort of be a center for activity and identification.
Mm-hmm. Steve, everyone's for quality education, and ideally everybody favors smaller class sizes, and if they could do it, they'd pay teachers as much as you could possibly pay a teacher in order to attract the best talent. But these particular virtues are often pitted against one another.
Absolutely.
Because the more teachers you have, the less you can pay per teacher, assuming you have a limited budget, which we have. How do you weigh those competing virtues?
First of all, I've always focused and believed in focusing on optimum class size, not necessarily looking towards minimizing class size for all. I'm looking for optimization of resources. It's for that reason that I always favored the Tennessee plan in terms of focusing class size reduction at those students who would most benefit from it in grades kindergarten through third grade. Where there is a demonstrated result that lingers on and keeps them on a more even keel as they reach middle school and high school.
Are you saying that there's no benefit after third grade for reduced class size?
Ideally, if you can go to a class structure of 15 students, you're going to get some benefit. Anything beyond that, however, it's arguable as to what the benefit is, the difference between 23 or 25 students.
And independent of the subject matter?
Independent of the subject matter. Where it does make a clear difference is in the early education. And that's why I've supported that. It's why I think Dan supported that approach as well. And it's why Paul Vance put that program into effect in Montgomery County over the last 2 years.
Except that it goes beyond that, because it not only provides for smaller class size in the early grades for reading, but also smaller class size in the middle school for math.
That is one which I still am awaiting the results on. Let me just give you an example. My daughter was in a double period physics class at Richard Montgomery High School. There were more students in the class than there were seats in the class. Most of the students in that class placed out of the physics requirement in college. So there's not necessarily a relationship between performance and class size. And that's why I think you have to be a little bit more selective as to where you apply it.
Dan?
I think you're right, everybody wants smaller classes, and what is the optimum? I think because the Tennessee study only studied the primary grades, that's the good research we have. But I think that just because that's the only research we have, that doesn't mean that smaller classes won't benefit. I think if you talk to teachers, I think intuitively we know that it's easier to manage a smaller class. I think we need to look at other ways to give children more individualized attention or more personal attention. Certainly at the secondary level, there are ways to organize schools so that teachers and students have maximum interaction over a period of time, working in groups, working in teams. In high school level, you could have a number of schools within schools where you have freshmen and sophomores staying together for 2 years in a row with the same team of teachers, so that there's a personal link. I think that's really what people are looking for in smaller classes. And we have to look at smaller classes. I think it's from an intuitive point of view, classroom management is easier, but it's only one way to do this, and we have to focus on it.
What's too many?
What's too many?
No, how many is too many?
How many? Too many. It's easy to say too many is.
Sorry, teachers out there.
Well, it's how many can a teacher handle and still communicate as well as they need to those students, and we don't really know, except for this one research study that studied younger classes.
Juan, if I could jump in on this, if you try to break out of the mold a little bit, we're now wiring our schools. we can do things like distance learning. We can emulate, at least in your high school level, the college approach of a larger lecture course and then breaking down into sections or recitation sections. You can utilize student mentors or teaching assistants in terms of those recitations, still working under a master teacher. I think we've got to start thinking about different ways of delivering optimum educational experiences and not focus as much on a numerical basis of how many kids in a class with a teacher.
Let's turn to the question of teachers and compensation. There's a big issue right now about the school board just voted not to provide the 10% supplemental pension to the teachers, which they've become accustomed to getting. And the teachers union is suing, and the Montgomery County delegation in Annapolis is upset, or at least the Democrats within it are very upset. Did the school board make a mistake? Should this issue be revisited, Dan?
I think it should be revisited because I don't think it was a very good decision. I think when you make decisions on compensation, that it has to be open and it has to be deliberate. It can't be narrow. I mean, the decision was made at meetings that weren't announced publicly, and then because the board was being sued, they held one more public meeting, and then they voted exactly the same way. I think when you deal with employees, the goal isn't to sort of get maximum efficiency. There are real benefits to having a workforce that likes working for you, and we reversed a 30-year policy of paying more for teachers because we wanted to attract the best teachers with a simple budget vote, and I think it was too rushed, and I think that we need to revisit it. We need to revisit it in a way that is a much more deliberate and open discussion.
Steve Abrams, you disagree?
I disagree. I'm not going to necessarily disagree on the procedural issues. I think there's always, in hindsight, better ways of doing it. I would point out, however, that the legislation itself, when it was passed without any consultation with the school system as to what are the implications of the legislation. I'm glad you pointed out rightfully that it's only Democratic members and only some Democratic members in the legislature who have complained, because several of the members that I've talked to have indicated that, number one, they weren't aware that the legislation that was being passed was intended to confer an additional benefit onto Montgomery County. It was their understanding that the legislation was to equalize the remainder of the state with Montgomery County and to bring the state of Maryland up to a higher level in terms of the pension compensation issue. The decision that was placed before the school board was, now that the state had acted and restored the amount up to a national level, whether there was any continued need for Montgomery County to have a differentiation within the state. So I guess it's a question of how you look at that issue. I'm one who believes in bargaining in good faith. And my record when I was on the board indicated that I took that obligation seriously. In fact, I cast a vote to honor the contract that we had negotiated with our teachers union in an issue where people were arguing that we should instead renege on that deal and use the funds instead to reduce class size. So I do believe in the sanctity of contract, but I think it has to be done rationally. And in this particular case, my sense is that Delegate Heller and Mr. Simon protest too much.
Standardized tests. Let's talk a little bit about school performance. Standardized tests, for sure, an imperfect measure of student performance. The Washington Post recently ran an article comparing SAT scores, college entrance exam scores, for African American students in Montgomery County and Fairfax County. And the scores in Montgomery County were about 100 points lower than in Fairfax County. Why do you think that's the case, and what could be done about it, Dan?
Well, I think initially we have a larger percentage of our African American students actually taking the test, which means that you have students who are not the most likely to score high. I mean, the more students that take the test, their academic performance is going to be lower. I don't think that we should look at that and say there's no significance to the gap. I think the gap between in performance between majority students and minority students in general has to do with how we teach. And we have to make sure that we focus on giving individual attention to those students so that we're teaching to them. I think there's a comprehensive approach to dealing with children, and whether they're in special education or whether they're a minority or whether they're poor or whether they're gifted, we should be able to deliver the education that gives them the most opportunities to achieve what they can achieve. And I don't think we're doing that with minority students or poor students in general. It's too easy for students at the lower end of achievement to be lost when we grade things on the average or by standardized tests. I think we have to personalize that education more.
Steve?
Well, I agree with Dan's assessment in terms of comparing apples with oranges, and that is the number of students.
Fairfax,
but in addition to that, the one factor that's not taken into account in that comparison is socioeconomic indicators and comparisons between the two as well. I think when that's factored in, you'll see probably an equalization as to the testing scores. I believe that we have an obligation to have a much higher expectation for all students in Montgomery County. I believe that we have a need for a much more rigorous curriculum and to not accept the excuse of non-performance.
We're about out of time, so okay. I just want to get to a few quick, just give me your yes and no answer or up and down answer on this. School vouchers, for or against?
Against.
In Montgomery County, against.
Okay. Charter schools, for or against?
Depends on the definition. The most conservative definition of charter schools, I'm against. But if it means innovative public schools, I would support them.
Well, I believe in charter schools within the context of the public school system, and that means adhering to the requirements of a public school. So I don't think Dan and I are going to be that far apart on that one.
Well, I don't think you're too far apart on anything you talked about tonight, but thanks for joining us tonight in the coffee house. Steve Abrams and Dan Parr, candidates for the school board at-large seat in Montgomery County. The election is November 3rd. Still ahead in the coffee house, nutritional supplements, time for serious regulation, the Cajun sounds of Squeeze Bayou, the future of Silver Spring's once thriving skate park, and more. I'm Mark Cohen, and this has been Coffee House Forum.
On the dance floor in a basement apartment, a girl finds the center of my back with her hand. Her head deep into my chest, and I love the grease in her hair, the smell of a hot comb burning in a kitchen flame. I stare at the tip of her ears, the place where cocoa butter has been, the dark brownish red blister waiting to be kissed. The room is dark, and we could undress if the music was just a bit slower, or maybe if it was the Dells. We could move to the far corner, the one where I recited my first poem from memory. If this was Euclid or Fairmont Street, the Howard boys might want the next dance. And so someone pulls a gun as quick as the lights go on, and I discover gangsters love to dance too. And I'm going as fast as a Louis Armstrong trumpet blast. Oh baby, forgive me for running out, but I thought I was a poet until I got the heebie-jeebies and these feet took the covers off my shoes.
Hello and welcome to In Sickness and in Health. Death by herbal tea, 70 home runs by Andro. Dietary supplements, some claim they're life-enhancing, others charge they're dangerous, and still others say they're placebos. Whether it's vitamin C, ginseng, zinc, or some more exotic substance, there's a good chance you are on supplements. Are they effective? Are they safe? Should you take them? Here to offer their learned opinions are Dr. Premala Brewster-Wilson, Director of the Institute of Preventive Medicine and Nutrition in Hyattsville, and Tracy Fox, Senior Federal Regulatory Manager at the American Dietetic Association. Welcome to the Coffee House.
Thanks.
First of all, what is a dietary supplement? I think there's some confusion about the definition of what they are.
Well, I think there is actually a law, just like this is in Washington, so there's a law for everything, but actually there is a law that does define what a dietary supplement is, and basically it can be some of the ones that you named, a vitamin supplement, as well as herbs or botanicals are considered vitamins or dietary supplements. Basically anything that's not a conventional food practically can be termed a dietary supplement.
So anything from rhino horn, which is taken in some cultures, to all kinds of teas would fall into that category.
A lot of them do. If it's not.
How widespread is their usage in the United States?
I think everyone has some kind of food supplements, and I like to call them food supplements because a lot of these items are food substances that are in capsules. So it's like groceries in a bottle.
Not all of them are food, though. The rhino horn, for example, would be. Is the use actually expanding very rapidly in the States? Is this, yeah?
I think you're seeing that again with the law that was passed in 1994 really did expand the definition, and I think because of that it also expanded the use that the public now is exposed to a lot more dietary supplements because the definition has broadened, and there's also a lot more sales pitches for them and a lot more label statements and claims that are enticing. So I think the use has increased a lot.
And people perhaps trying to be their own doctor as well.
A lot of that.
How come it's grown parallel with regular drugs that are under the auspices of the FDA? It's existed for many, many centuries in some cultures. Perhaps you'd like to talk about how they predate pharmaceutical drugs.
Well, they've been used in many cultures for centuries. And for example, garlic was even mentioned by Moses in the biblical days, and the children of Israel were complaining why they didn't have the leeks and the garlic when they were out in the wilderness. And in the etchings of 3,000 years BC, in some of the excavations in India, we've got the designs of the garlic on the walls. So some of these have been used for centuries, and they've come down as folklore, and the medicine women usually had the information which was passed down from generation to generation.
And garlic, for instance, was used for what?
As an antibiotic, and to lower blood pressure, and I know it was used when I was a child. It was used to cut down the whoops on a whooping cough.
Some of the other popular ones that are out there today, can you mention a few and say where you think they've come from?
Oh gosh, there are tons. I think you mentioned some of them. Creatine, the andro ones, in terms of the weight reduction. There are a lot for weight reduction, and a lot of megadoses of traditional vitamin supplements like vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin A. There's other herbal products like St. John's wort, which is used to maintain proper emotional balance, and has shown some good research in Germany in terms of trying to reduce mild depression. So there are just about anything you can come up with. There's probably a dietary supplement sold to help.
Yeah, you mentioned the andro. That, of course, has got recent fame with Mark McGuire's 70 home runs. He admits to taking it, and it's permissible. But
by some associations, some associations don't permit it. I think the NCAA doesn't, while others do. So I think there's a real mixed bag out there too in terms of which ones have been proven effective and what organizations choose to allow them and don't choose to allow them. So not a lot of consistency there.
Some would disallow them because they're too close to steroids.
Too close to steroids, or they just don't feel that there's enough scientific evidence to prove that they're effective for that level of performance.
Dr. Premala, you use a lot of supplements for your patients.
Yes, I do.
Can you explain the kind of success you have with it?
Well, I have very good success, but I don't prescribe ephedra or andro.
Right.
And often a supplement might get a bad name because there was one case that showed up bad, and usually it was an overdosing or a wrong prescription for the person. So when we look at the supplements, we need to look at them with an open mind and with caution, so that we don't do anything that would be out of balance and would be difficult for the body.
And I think, yeah, and I should say that that's an important point, and I think especially with the regulatory framework that's established now for dietary supplements, it's not real tight, and I think the consumer is left to make a lot of decisions and choices when they go into anything from a pharmacy to a grocery store to a nutrition store in your local mall. There's a plethora of supplements available, and I think one really needs to be knowledgeable, and right now the knowledge is left to the consumer and what's marketed and what's on the label, and if you don't have professionals who really know what they're doing and really know how to make the combinations and the treatments, it can be very dangerous.
So if I go into a store with an idea of a supplement that a friend has told me about, there's no real way one can tell from the labeling whether or not it can do what it's claimed to do, because there's laws against claiming medical benefits for supplements. Is
right. I mean, a supplement can't treat, it can't claim to treat, prevent, cure, or diagnose a disease, and that's kind of the rule. So it can help maintain, it can, but that's about it. I mean, it's going to say maintain emotional balance or whatever, and I think another point is there are no real standards in terms of manufacturing practices, and one vitamin supplement or one supplement may have a certain extract, whereas another one might be slightly different standardization. So one week you buy brand A and the next week you buy brand B, you might be using them the same, yet in reality the dosage is different, and that's just, there's just a lot of information out there, and misinformation.
So with your patients, you have to be absolutely sure that they are taking.
Well, what I do,
doses.
I treat all ages and all diseases, and I use no chemicals and no drugs. So I depend heavily upon herbal medicine and upon vitamin mineral supplements and classical homeopathy. And none of my patients have called me and said, we have had a bad reaction. Now, I may have had a patient who got some loose stools because they took extra calcium magnesium, and I'll tell them, cut that in half, your body is not dealing with it adequately. And that's the only kind of reaction that I've had. So I find it difficult to wave a really scary signal, you know, a red flag, in front of people to say, like, all supplements must be looked at with caution, because that's not really the case. And when you see the way the industry is growing, then you know somebody is consuming it. And we haven't had poison control centers getting lots of calls from these nutrition supplements. And so we need to keep it in balance and you know, see a person who is trained and licensed to practice nutrition. And that's why, you know, we are there as nutritionists and are able to take care of our patients.
Right. The poison centers maybe aren't getting a lot of calls, but there are cases that reach the media. For instance, young women trying to lose weight. Which supplement was that they were on? And
the fen-phen.
And that can be rather dangerous in overdose. The dosage is something that's very difficult to ascertain.
Sure.
Again, it's the balance, I believe, because something in a smaller dosage might be fine for you, but if you overdose on it, you will have some reactions. And so there's nothing inherently wrong with the substance itself, but the quantity that was taken. And so you need to see somebody who can tell you what dose would be good for you.
Right.
And you know, what would be counterindicated in your particular situation. For example, take garlic. Garlic will help to lower some people's blood pressures. And I've actually had a patient who had moderate blood pressure. She took a lot of garlic, she went into the bathtub and was taking a hot bath, which also was vasodilating, and so her blood pressure came down a little. She stood up and she was dizzy. So I said, whoa, in your case you should not be taking the garlic, because you know, your blood pressure was low when you came out of that bathtub, and it doesn't mean that garlic is bad, but this particular combination did not work for you.
So it's overdosage, which can be
Yes.
dangerous. It's combinations, which can be dangerous. and I suppose an individual's physical state.
Metabolism.
What's good for one is bad for another.
And like you had said, also the sometimes a lack of standardization within the supplement itself. I mean, it can vary from one to the next because there really aren't any good manufacturing practices per se that are in place for manufacturers. A lot of them do practice well and make good products, but there's not. You don't have a real strong feel that every one of them does.
Well, all supplements are not created equal is the way I put it to my patients, because you can have a supplement that reads well on the label, but when you put it on the inside of you, the bioavailability or your body's ability to pick it up is not going to be as good, and maybe it doesn't dissolve, and maybe 8 inches from deposit you can still see it on an x-ray, which we have seen. And people with porta potties, when they go to clean up that thing, say there's a thick layer of pills at the bottom that just passed through the GI tract. So we've got many things that we need to consider when we're looking at the quality of a supplement. And
sorry, we're going to have to finish there, but certainly we have to be very careful about what we eat. A very warm thank you to Dr. Premala Brewster-Wilson and Tracy Fox for their views on the controversial field of dietary supplements. Until next time, eat well and be well. For In Sickness and in Health, I'm Cathy Kristiansen.
Still to come, the Cajun sounds of Squeeze Bayou, a poem for Boss's Day, and what now for Silver Springs Skate Park.
Well, I'd like to welcome Squeeze Bayou to the Musical Traditions segment of Tacoma Coffee House. And it's a special welcome because I guess many years ago, Karen and Fred were the sole members, sort of, when we were high atop the City Hall in Tacoma Park.
Like an old studio.
The old studio.
Right.
But now now we've expanded to the full band sound, and things are going great for you guys.
Yeah.
I guess should we talk about the award? Yeah, let's talk about the award. What award? It's the CFMA.
Right, the Cajun French Music Association.
And it was best Cajun band not from the state of Louisiana.
Best recording by Cajun band outside of Louisiana.
And there were 14,000 entries at least.
Oh, at least.
Right.
At least.
And but that's a great thing.
Yeah, it's really neat.
Seriously, how big an association is that? It's with the popularity of this music, I would think it's growing and growing.
Right. Well, there's associations, the CFMA, all over southwestern Louisiana and Texas, but there's Cajun groups playing all over the world.
I know for me, just like strictly as a fan of you guys, having sort of watched you evolve, I was like, oh yeah, I knew them when they were just, yeah, look, I've watched them grow. So it's really exciting. I mean, it's a great honor, and now other people will get to hear your music and proudly put that sticker on the CD. And
that's right.
What was the name of the tune you brought us in with?
That was the Acadian two-step.
Okay. And you got another one for us?
Yeah, the next one's going to be a waltz. This one's the Calcasieu Waltz.
Okay. Well, I'll go grab one of these camera people and waltz around the studio. Around. Yes. Take it away. Had a little waltz there with the nice young lady on camera 3. Guy on camera 1, he was upset, but it's okay. I want to show the CD. It's called Squeeze Bayou, Steppin' Out.
Steppin' fast.
Imagine my embarrassment. Well, it's just so small. Squeeze Bayou is big, Steppin' Fast. You'll name one Steppin' Out, maybe the next one. Something like that. Save me here, help me out here. It's a good thing you guys are off mic. Only Karen and I get to talk about this. So I'm going to hold this here to make sure that the camera gets a good shot of it. How about telling us the difference between Cajun and Zydeco and how they're maybe even blending together a little bit?
Well, they're both from the same area of the country. They're both from southwestern Louisiana. But the Zydeco is more from the black tradition, so there's a little more rhythm and blues influence in it. And also, typically, it's a little more electric.
Okay.
The Cajun's more from the white culture, usually not electric.
Is it rural and urban as well?
Not really.
No?
No. But there's a lot of crossover, and there's a lot of the same tunes that are played both in Cajun and
Someone
Zydeco.
told me that the word Zydeco actually came from snap beans.
That's right.
Haricot. Do you guys, as
That's
official champion band members, you agree with that?
That's right.
Okay. Touring. You guys going to do some national touring now on the strength of this recording?
I don't think so. We have day jobs.
Yeah.
So we stay pretty close to this area.
Okay. Letterman's on the phone. He what are you going to take us out with?
Steppin' fast.
Not stepping out. I'll step out. You play stepping fast.
Right.
Still to come, is there room for kids in the new Silver Spring? But first, an ode for Boss's Day.
So I'll dedicate a poem to your boss. There aren't enough poems celebrating bosses around there. This is an ode called Bosses Are Great. Bosses are great. Bosses are great at telling you that bosses are great. Bosses are great at telling you that bosses are great at telling you that bosses are great. They understand these nuances. Bosses understand the give and take of business. Bosses are great with the take of business. Bosses give you the business. Bosses are as generous as they are great. If all you ask is your living wage, your boss will give you your going wage. I won't do anything without a boss. I keep one on my back. Sometimes, can you keep a secret? When I'm partway to sleep, I fantasize that I'm in a sauna with a boss in my every orifice, and a whole secretarial pool is playing the bamboo flute. I wish I was great. Why, I could be a boss. Then, if there were anything in me left to love, I could present it, I could comb it, and dress it in my own company uniform like it was some beautiful horse flop, and I could boss it around.
Hi, and welcome to Body and Soul. You know, life doesn't always deal from the bottom of the deck. Sometimes we get a pleasant surprise. So it was with East of Maui, a skateboarding rink that located itself in downtown Silver Spring a few years ago. You can imagine what a lot of folks expected, a new hangout for noisy, rowdy juveniles. But East of Maui became instead a place valued even by the police. Now, sad to say, the rink has been closed, a victim of progress. Quite a story. And here with a report from the streets is Ed Bajer.
You see them on roads, along sidewalks, and in empty parking lots. Skateboarders and skaters are often considered a public nuisance, but only a few towns have accommodated these athletes with a designated area and the proper facilities. For years, East of Maui and downtown Silver Spring have been the local hangout and haven for skaters.
But now, after a sudden ownership change, East of Maui is closed, leaving skaters and skateboarders out in the streets without any plans for a new site here in Silver Spring or in the surrounding communities.
East of Maui may become just another apartment complex in the city, while the entire area of Silver Spring becomes the skaters' new course. Thanks to East of Maui, skaters, police, and the general public have enjoyed a peaceful coexistence in Silver Spring. But with the park's closing, will that peace last?
Have you guys been hassled at all? Like skating in public like this?
Every day.
What's the worst thing that's been said to you?
Worst thing?
Yeah.
They threatened to arrest me a couple times. They tried to take my skates and usually just run. You know.
With the police? Or?
Yeah.
That might come as a big surprise to Sergeant John Hack.
Most of the skateboarders I've dealt with have been very friendly. You ask them to move on. There's no hassles. We get along very well with them. Most of the young kids. You know, and my theory is if they're out here doing something, fun, they're out in the open having fun, they're playing and skating, then they're not up to something else. You know, they're doing something that's good, healthy, and it's exercise. So I have no difficulties with them at all.
Okay. You don't consider them a nuisance at all then?
I do not personally, no.
So far, no injuries or property damage involving skaters has been reported to the police. But without the safety of the park, police and skaters fear that could change.
Because now what's going to happen is the kids are into the skating and they have all the different types of ramps there, and the kids are going to look for some place to go. They're going to go into the garages again, they're going to go in the street, and the calls will start coming up again. And personally, I don't find that a problem. As long as they stay out of the traffic, stay off the roadway, just do it someplace where, you know, they're not getting in the way of traffic where they can get hurt.
The penalty for skating or skateboarding in a restricted area, such as a parking garage, is a fine ranging from $25 to $50. Hopefully small fines will be the only problems police and skaters face in Silver Spring in the future. For the Coffee House, I'm Ed Bajer.
Thank you, Ed. Now for more ins and outs of this story, let's talk to Dave Loop, the former owner of East of Maui. Dave, welcome to the show.
How you doing? It's good to be here on the Tacoma Coffee House.
Thank you. Now, you're an ex-musician, or a musician. The first time you ever done something like this, a skateboarding rink, what were your expectations?
My expectations were kind of funny. The bid came up, I put in on the bid, and we got it.
You got it.
And I was more surprised than you could ever believe.
So now you're in charge of something that in fact is, on the face of it, a public nuisance, right? You're attracting all these kids.
What really happened is kids need a skate park. I mean, there's no place to skate, like they're saying, and it's one of these venues where you can go skate on the street, you can skate here, you can skate there, but you can't find ramps anywhere. You can't find a street course built in front of you anywhere, and it's a good thing for them. You bring a group of kids in that are regularly, you know, if you see kids that go to football games, baseball games, they're involved in school sports and things like that. These aren't those same kids. These are kids that, you know, after school they get out, they want to go to a skate park, and they create their own little team of a bunch of kids that just have fun doing one thing.
They're lone rangers.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
Individuals.
But brought together here at this rink.
Yeah.
So the reality was more or less the opposite of what everybody expected.
I think so, yeah.
And dangerous? Is this dangerous?
Well, it is. You're doing a dangerous activity. It can be dangerous if you're wearing the right protection, which we require there. It's not that dangerous. It's actually pretty safe. You do have, you know, your normal injuries just like you would at a hockey rink or a basketball court, things like that. But it's pretty minimal.
And do you do this yourself ever?
You know, I did.
I mean,
I have for a while. I'm into other things now. You know, windsurfing, other sports like that. I don't skate a lot for one. I don't really have a lot of time for it. I'm in the shop most of the time.
Well, how many kids were hanging out there at the height of this?
At the height of it, on weekends, we'd have 120, sometimes 150 kids hanging out. For a while, it got very crowded, almost too much for us to handle. But it mellowed out after, you know, the first 8 or 9 months. If you don't move everything around, switch everything, they go right back out on the street again to go skate everything else. They want it to move around.
Is there sort of like a network, a grapevine that they have?
In a way, yeah. There's all the local spots they skate. There's, you know, you hear a lot of funny names like Big Bird and the Blood Rail, and these are all certain spots in, you know, Bethesda or Silver Spring, and where everybody has their spot to go skate.
And so now you're closed up because this same spot has to be used for the revitalization plan.
Right, they're going to develop the area. Folger Pratt's coming in, they'll probably use that area as a site to put their trailers and things like that to get their construction on the way.
And the place just disappears off the face of the map?
Well, there's not much you can do. I mean, the county gave us a spot to use, and it's done a good thing. I mean, the police agree with us. It worked for the time that it was supposed to. And unfortunately, the skate park, I think the only way to really run it successfully is to have it indoors. Your busiest days would be when it's raining, when it's snowing. You're going to have a better turnout than the days when it's sunny, believe it or not.
Right, so you were saying this was actually something of a partnership between you as a private entrepreneur and the county.
Yeah, it's a public-private partnership.
Right, which made it succeed because you didn't have to pay rent.
Right.
You had low overhead.
And the county was very helpful with everything. I mean, Charlie Steinbreaker and a few other guys in the county were just great with it. I mean, they wanted it to work. They really, you know, put their foot forward to do it.
But for it really to succeed, the county would have to do more than that. They'd have to come up with a facility, an indoor facility.
Yeah, more than a facility. Somebody needs to be liable for it all instead of one person. And I took all the liability on myself, which got to the point where, you know, that's hard for any one person to take. Every day, if somebody does get hurt, you have a problem.
Right.
You know, it's right here. It hurts every day. You're like, oh boy.
Right. So this really, your advice would be, the county recreation department or some agency of the county should step forward, find this place, and also pony up for the insurance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the time has come. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I probably would have said, don't bother, but I think things are changing. If you look at, you know, ESPN and all the stations, all the commercials on TV, just about everything you look at, you're going to see an inline skater or a skateboarder involved in it.
Yeah, I mean, how old are these kids? All teenagers?
Not really.
No?
our customers ranged anywhere from 7 years old to 45. I mean, we had a lot of older guys skating too. So.
No, but it can be a family affair.
Yeah.
But primarily, you're saying this is to get kids off the street, kids who ordinarily would just be out hanging, as we saw on the video, out by the metro, wherever.
It did become kind of a meeting place for everybody. They'd come there and they would actually stay in the skate park, skate it, and every once in a while venture out and hit another spot and then come back.
Right. Well, you mentioned to me before the show that you were there just the other day after the place is closed, padlocked. It's dark, but you turn on the lights and what?
Actually, I came over in my truck and pulled up, and it looked like somebody turned the lights on in a house that has roaches. It went, everybody's out of there because they're not supposed to be there right now. So,
right. But you can't keep them away.
Nah, it's hard.
Well, so would you venture a guess? Is the county going to come up with a new place?
I know they're working on some things. I don't know what's going to come of it. If something did, I'd be interested in, doing it again, participating in it. But it's hard to say right now until they figure out their own plans with Silver Spring. I don't really know.
And do you have any location that you'd like to suggest?
I don't know.
Okay.
Indoor space is hard to find cheap.
But we'll put out the call. Anybody out there have a spot? Get in touch with Dave. Get in touch with Charlie Steinbrecher at the county, and we'll do it.
All right.
They'll do it. Thank you anyway, Dave.
Thank you.
For Tacoma Coffee House, I'm Howard Cohn. This has been Body and Soul.
That's it for the October edition. See you next month in the Coffee House.